Okay, it's this car, Volvo S60. We have the right rear pad is missing. As a result, the brake piston has overextended and is leaking. Right there, all the fluid has come out, draining all over the ground. The car has lost brake hydraulics. There's no fluid. Brake pedal goes to the floor. The reason is this brake rotor. Volvos take solid brake rotors and vented brake rotors. You can't interchange them or else this happens. You see this big gap in between the rotor and the caliper bracket? This gap is so large it allows the brake pad to fall out, right? This is like nearly a 1-inch gap between the caliper and the bracket because this car takes vented rotors, not solid rotors. See how thin this brake rotor is? About a 1/2 inch thick. The car takes this kind. It's much thicker. Now we're going to install that and demonstrate. For instance, on the front, you can see there's barely any gap between the bracket and the rotor, so the pad cannot fall out. Alright, we've got the piston, or the caliper removed, rather, unbolted. You can see that caliper piston is so far out, it went past where the seals go in the caliper and has leaked out all the fluid as a result. Let's see if we can get in there and, yeah, see all the fluid coming out of there, because this went out way too far because the pad got ejected from the bracket. Again, as you can see, there's this huge gap between the rotor and the bracket. It's not supposed to be like that. Okay, so we got this brake rotor unbolted. I'm trying to work one-handed here. Get that brake rotor off of there. We'll put it on the table. This is what should be on the car. See how thick it is? This is what I took off. So now we'll put it on. Okay, we got the new rotor on there, the vented rotor that it's supposed to have. Again, we're still working on the same car, by the way, in case you're wondering. And there's the leaky caliper still mounted, but I'm going to mount the bracket. I would do so on video, but I can't do that with one hand. Okay, here we go with the new bracket and rotor installed. The vented rotor that the car is supposed to have. See now, there's basically no gap between the bracket and the rotor. See? Very small. I could barely fit a pocket screwdriver in there. That's very thin. It's the way it's supposed to be. Now the other side, again, same car. The other side still has the solid rotor that was installed previously. The pad is still there, but if you look, the pad is just barely hanging on by a thread. This pad is about to fall off again because this gap is so huge. So whenever the pad gets thinner than this gap between the rotor and the bracket, the pad's just going to fall out. As you can see, I'm trying to capture this. This pad is barely hanging on by a thread. I don't know if you can quite see that, but it's tough to capture with the phone here, but I would say sometime in the next couple 100 miles, this pad will also fall out and suffer the same result as the other side over there. Tough to, yeah, you can see that pad is right about to fall out because the gap between the bracket and the rotor is so big. This pad is barely worn. It's not like it's worn down to metal. It's nearly new. but yet with the correct rotor, there's basically no gap. Just like on the front, which has never been touched to my knowledge. Barely any gap between the bracket and the rotor. That's how it's supposed to be. So someone removed the vintage rotor from the car and installed a solid rotor and didn't think anything of it until customer lost all their brake fluid and their brake pedal, which is scary.